Podcast time. Podcast time. Austin,
Yeah.
it's podcast time again. It's 40k
Oh,
Max
is it?
Podcast. Yes, it is. Shane and Austin with you today for a really big show. We've got a really big, it's going to be really great and really big show.
Massive.
Are all of your structures intact, sir? We had storms, major weather events go through the area.
Oh, yeah. Doing well here, but I know a lot of people out there aren't.
Yeah, and our weatherman, his house got lightly struck, and so he proceeded to ignore all other incidents around the area as he tried to get various people to go drive by his house while on TV. And I thought that was poor, and I don't care who knows it. Perhaps they'll invite me on TV to give my rebuttal. I would love that. I will get thrown out. But here on 40k Fanatics, we actually do give you the opportunity to give your rebuttal on whatever you want to say to us when we open up the Vox channel, as we do right now. The Vox channel is where we read your comments that you leave on Spotify, on YouTube, on various places that you can get at us. And this one comes from Spotify on our Can You Do Rule of Cool in 40k. Yes, you can, I will say. This comes from the homie Dave and Company, many times featured. I buy models based on Rule of Cool, not to be whack, W-A-A-C. Does that mean something besides?
Win at any cost.
Ah, win at any cost, right. I also like whack. Like I've got 2 Nurgle Helldrakes, which ain't in the Codex anymore. I recently painted 20 Ultramarine Terminators, not because First Company is great, but because I just love the new Terminator sculpt. I buy what I want to build and paint, rather than the meta flavor of the month. That's really great by Dave and Company, because let me tell you something. Even the new hotness has already been thumped a little bit, right? We had the Balanced Data Slate come out, and I believe some of the Emperor's Children points went kind of crazy. So almost immediately there was some stuff. I know there was some stuff with Aldari too. The 2 most recent codexes that things got moved around, and already I saw in the local group chat some people on some. Well, now I've got to get this, that, and the other. And the demons got some new stuff, but I want to talk about that a little bit, maybe briefly when we get to the bits box. But there's people out here looking for some demons now because they're the new hotness this week. And I'm sure there will be a couple of adjustments need to be made.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't seem terribly busted.
I saw some people talking about demons in our local Facebook group chat.
Yeah, I think the demon thing is cool. I mean, I guess we can talk about it now. The demon thing is really neat. It's a new detachment for demons where you kind of get the word bearer's detachment rule from Chaos Space Marines, where you can take combo demons and half your army can be Space Marines, and the Space Marines get their dark packs, and so do some of the demons, which is really cool. So, we've got more comments. So this one comes from a video, YouTube exclusive, where I put a camera up, and I'm going to have to find a microphone that I like better for this, but I'll go over a little bit of Crusade Force bookkeeping type stuff. So, there are not very many resources for playing Crusade, and I wanted to do the new Nachman Gauntlet. So as I was setting up my new Crusade Force, I thought, this is a lot of reading, and it's very abstract, so perhaps people would like to see how that looks. And so far, it seems that you all have enjoyed that. I'll read a couple of comments here. Asgard Medic says, nice to see some Crusade stuff on YouTube. It's a shame GW sidelines it this much. And For King Dave, this seems like the way to play 40k, but it really needs refining and streamlining. I responded to 4 King Dave because, in my opinion, it's pretty streamlined once you get your head around it. It's just, I mean, if ever there were a time where the idea of you're the computer in a tabletop war game, versus like a video game, it's in Crusade, where you're having to keep up with experience points and all this. But had the homie over to play the first match of the Crusade. Dylan, I believe it was Dylan. Dylan has a twin, Dalton. One of the twins came by, and he brought his Dark Angels, and he brought his Codex, and he had some really neat Crusade rules in there. And I had my guys, we played a 1,000-point game in the new Nachman Gauntlet, where you have to break your army into waves, and it was really fun. So I'm also going to make some more maybe book specific Crusade videos. So those will be coming soon. If you enjoyed that, we might make a little series of Crusade resources.
Hmm. Yeah, sounds good. I know it got a big uptick in views recently, and I was pretty pleased by that. So if you guys want more of that, we can definitely give that out.
I also got a message from the homie Craig. He wants us to do an old world battle report. What with
Okay.
our what with our alleged video expertise.
Yeah,
And I
we can do
thought
something like that.
that would kind of be fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, we're getting close to having our first battle, I believe, in the next week or so.
Yeah, possibly. So let's close the Vox channel for now and open up the Bits box, the next part of the show where we talk about what we've done in the hobby this week. Open it up. Oh, that's a much better sound effect than last week. Austin, I've talked for the first 5 minutes straight. What have you done in the miniature hobby this week?
Well, I'll be honest and say I haven't done much because of these storms that came through last week. I have a bit of storm anxiety, and I've been, I guess, obsessively going over the storm models that were coming in from the National Weather Service and uh, doing my own amateur meteorology on it. Basically, doing like chicken bone divination, trying to figure out how this storm could impact me up until the point where it actually hit. So I've been kind of in a doom mode looking at that and not really feeling up for doing much because of that. Yeah, the storms came through, did pretty bad damage around here in Arkansas, and also hit Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee. Um, but yeah, it's bad out there. If you want, people can donate to different charities and organizations to help with the people out here. But we're all okay. It was a quite a stressful night, but yeah, because of that, no real hobbying being done for that. But afterwards, I did help my girlfriend's brother using my Warhammer skills to repair a bobblehead that he has.
Yeah, was that a Duck
Repairing,
Dynasty bobblehead?
yes, it's a Willie Robertson Duck Dynasty bobblehead. My girlfriend and I were helping move some stuff, and that got knocked over in the floor. It shattered because she dropped it. Uh, So I took it upon myself to help repair that. I super glued the legs back together as the base. I don't have a before picture, unfortunately. I just have the after photo. But it fell on the floor, shattered at the base and the legs over by the ankles. So I took that, super glued it back together, but there were some chips that were missing, so the legs were kind of gashed a little bit. Took some green stuff, epoxy putty, and I sculpted back the leg work, try to get some of the folds going with like the jeans and everything. Got that, and then put a little bit on the boot where it also chipped a little bit, and then started working on painting back over the green stuff. I first tried a Vallejo Prussian blue, dark Prussian blue, to try to match the jeans, but it ended up a little bit too purple for my taste and the taste of the jeans. It was a bit too dark and purple, so I then switched up with GW's Cantor Blue Citadel, and that was a much closer match for it.
Very
And then
nice.
for the yeah, and then for the boots, I initially tried Rhinox Hide, but that was far too dark. So I tried going over with a Morphang Brown, but then that was too light. So then I did the middle point by mixing the two together, and then that seemed like a 98% match for it.
Well,
But
look
it
at you.
looks really good. I know. I need to open up a I guess repair shop for like knickknacks and collectibles.
Yeah, man, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? So many problems you would come across to then learn how to solve. Um, Check that out in the bits box on our Discord. Link below. It's totally free to join the Discord, and you can talk to us and look at what we're doing and check out the goings on therein, as well as you can see that over on the YouTube video where I'm sure Austin will put it in.
Yeah.
Um, of course, Discord participation is subject to whether or not you're going to be an asshole. Um, so far we haven't had that happen. Let's see what did I do? Oh, I've got so talking about Old World, talking about the idea of doing a battle report for Old World. I have now got I got in the I got in the Old World list builder thing, and I put all the stuff in that I have built and painted and ready to go because I still am maintaining that I'm not going to play a gray model. I'm just not going to do that. And I'm up to 537 points, which is not enough.
No.
No. Um, so I'm probably gonna do another unit of spearmen. That's kind of the idea.
Yeah.
Um, they've got my great eagle and my bolt throwers in though. So this week I'll go and get them. Perhaps I'll do another unit of spearmen and another and an eagle. Maybe I don't know. I kind of want to take my time with the eagle. It's going to be really pretty, but definitely a bolt thrower. That shouldn't be too hard.
Oh
So
no, that shouldn't be too hard.
yeah, and
Especially if you just do one of them.
yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing is I'm sort of doing one of everything and then sort of cycling around. I find that this is the first time I've done an army painting project, and I'm trying to do it with some level of haste, you know. But I'm not having the greatest time with it. I find that there's something to batch painting that I don't like, and I think it's the way that everything comes together at the end. So you do step 1 through 5, and then all of a sudden step 6 and 7 you just have 10 done things or a dozen done models. And that's kind of cool, but also I know I'm not doing as good a job on each model as I would do if I was doing one at a time, and I'm not sure that it actually is taking less time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a part of me that wonders if I just did each one of these from start to finish to standard, would it be quicker? Or would it at least feel better? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But also I'm going to stick with it. And I mean it is fun in the way that, things can be fun like practice of a musical instrument or practice at your golf can be fun. Um, and the result is turning out really nice. Like they look really good on the shelf. Uh, as I finish a unit, I'm putting it on the shelf in its little block the way that it will be on the battlefield, and they look really good. Um, one thing that's happening is because I'm really trying not to use like I'm not doing any all over washing at all,
Hmm.
and they're turning out very bright, which I like. Like there's yellow, there's white, there's a lot of very very light blues, and so the whole army is looking really really vibrant, which I appreciate. I think they're going to look
Hmm.
great on the table, especially when there's just a huge sprawl of them, which there will be because I mean there's just it's going to be a big old shelf full by the time it's all said and done.
Oh yeah.
And then there'll be a dragon.
Hmm.
The temptation is to just build the dragon because it's something like 400 points, but I think that for lower points games, that's just like the win now button. So I don't really want to do that.
Yeah, I think usually dragons are kind of sequestered to the 2,000 point and up.
Yeah, and
It's kind of like once
go ahead.
you can have centerpiece models in like smaller games, like 1,000 and up, but the dragons kind of have such a big power to them because it's not just the dragon. You also have a character riding the dragon, and just that powerhouse at such low levels can just like dominate the board.
Yeah, and I'm not trying. I didn't even get the dragon because I was seeking any sort of competitive advantage. But high elves ride dragons, and I'm like, well, then I have to have a dragon in the collection. You see,
Yeah,
whether I end up running him very often or not is beside the point. But I'm that guy on that kind of thing. Like I've got a Corn Lord of Skulls for my Chaos Space Marines. No,
yeah.
no, nobody runs that thing. It's not great. It's too big to move around. You know. Uh,
Hmm.
but damn it, look at it.
Yeah.
What else? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the first Crusade game because the Crusade seems to be hot in these streets, or at least on the 40k Fanatic streets. You would absolutely love playing in this Crusade. I would like you to put together a Crusade Force. I don't know if you're gonna, um, but it is a complete. This Nachman Gauntlet Crusade specifically is a completely different way to play.
Oh yeah.
You're required to break your force into 4 waves, a primary and 3 secondaries, and then you're going to only deploy 2 of those secondary waves. There is no rapid ingress strat. You can't even use it. All right? There's deep
Okay.
strike rules for things that have deep strike with a random table, so you can come down within 3 inches of a unit and shoot and charge. Okay? But if
Uh
you
huh.
try to do this, it could go wrong and they could just stand there. I think they. I don't know if they could be completely destroyed, but I believe they can end up being unable to shoot or charge or anything and be battle shocked coming in.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So now you're just right there and they're like, uh oh. But that's awesome. The other thing is the mission that we played was a straight up attack defend mission where I was the defender and I was tasked to defend my deployment zone. Basically, there were 3 objectives straight down the middle, just and 2 of them were in my deployment zone, and only one in no man's land. And the attacker
Hmm.
got a point at the end of every turn if they had the no man's land one, and then both of us got points if they had the deployment zone ones. And then also, my waves were delayed by a mission rule. So in Nachman Gauntlet, you put your whole primary wave out first, and then you
Hmm.
choose a wave for turn 2 and turn 3. Well, I had to wait till turn 3 and turn 4. So he's coming at me, and I don't have much stuff out, and I'm just sort of falling the entire time. And I
Yeah.
ended up losing, but it was a really close game, and it felt very. We only played 1,000 points, and it felt very um like PC, right? Because not
Hmm.
much stuff was on the board at any given time, because we'd sort of get stuff out, something would go at something and kill it, and then you'd have to wait, and the next turn there'd be new units on. And so we made it to turn 5 and finished the game, and I said, man, if we had just had 1,000 points out at the beginning, we never would have made it to turn 5. And the
Hmm.
game didn't take very long, but it was so tactically fresh the way
Yeah.
it worked, and I mean, you would love it. And there's tons of missions like that where the attacker and the defender, the deployment zones are all over the place, man. There, there's one that's like storm the beachhead,
Hmm.
which is just I want to say the attacker's deployment zone is this tiny little wedge or something, and then no man's land is about 6 inches of no man's land, and then the idea I think might be just to get out of your deployment zone and onto the
Hmm.
beachhead where the enemy is dug in with tons of stuff.
Yeah, sounds interesting. I really like the idea of the waves. That's what I like.
Yeah, I tell you what, breaking your list into waves, especially the 1,000 point, is a game of its own because you
Hmm.
have to choose like the waves are prescriptive. So you can have like a 600 point first wave, and then your other waves are 200 points, and 200 points is not a lot. So
Hmm.
what happens is you end up with a bunch of 180 point waves, 165 point waves, and so you end up playing down some points. But it cuts that way for your opponent too.
Yeah.
Um, I set up a different list. I added some stuff after the first battle with my requisition point, and I set it up where my primary is 400 points, and then my other waves are 300 points, and that
Hmm.
that was enough room. But I'm at man, look, if you ran Necrons or Tyranids or something, orcs, where your little battle line units are super cheap, the way to line out this crusade force, especially in the beginning of the crusade, is to have a whole bunch of smaller units, so that you can really move around and really play with the way you set your waves up to deploy and have
Hmm.
options. There's even as the campaign goes on, there's various phases, and I'll cover this when I do the videos in the series of Crusade stuff, um, where you get certain boons for holding various territory in the campaign, and one of them allows you to have 4 secondary waves,
Mm-hmm.
and you're still only going to use 2 of them, but then you have even more options, and you end up playing 1,000 points because that's how the math works out of the primary and 2 of the secondaries. But those other 2 are just bonus points that you get to select, which is neat.
Oh,
They don't actually appear on the table because they end up unused in those other waves. But I think it's really cool to have some totally different units and strategies in those waves. To because you don't know what you're going to end up having to need. You might need a
oh
tank
yeah.
by turn 3, or you might need some deep striking unit to jump in and stand there with your warlord for an agenda that you've picked. That's one of the agendas that everybody can access is get your warlord to your enemy's deployment zone. Like, it's really good. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say that whole laying action sort of thing with the reinforcements coming in is what I enjoyed about Flames of War. Is trying being like, well, I need this to come in now, but I can't really guarantee I'm going to be getting that like that, and trying to play the best of your ability when the cards aren't necessarily in your hand at all times.
Yeah, and you get to pick which wave you send out, but
Yeah,
your opponent gets to pick which wave they send out too, and
that's what I mean. Just
yeah,
like
you both end up aware of your
having to,
waves, but
yeah,
it becomes this whole like cat and mouse game, and like, ooh, if they bring
yeah,
in this, then I've got to be prepared to whatever. And
yeah,
the first game we played, I'm all prepared for, okay, turn 2, turn 3, I'm going to send a wave out, I'm going to send a wave out. We read the mission, and no, you're delayed, he said to me,
yeah.
and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just figure out how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because at one point I'm like, I don't have anything on the board hardly. I was
Yeah.
nearly tabled, and it's like, okay, here they come, bang bang. Now I'm back fighting. But it was great, and again, it's a totally fresh way to play with your toys. I'm sure it's not balanced, but that's not what it's about. It's about a new way to play with your toys, and I think that's always a good idea. But that's my
Yeah.
bits box.
Was it?
Yeah, I suppose so. You've brought us a main topic today. What are we talking about today, Austin?
We, we are talking about dice etiquette.
Dice etiquette. Etiquette. I don't suppose you've got old Merriam-Webster handy to define etiquette for the people, do you?
Oh, I do not, but I do have a good old Webster Google.
Yeah, etiquette. Spelt with a T, by the way. Um,
Let's see.
it's about how you act.
Yeah,
I thought this would be a good entree to talk about game etiquette more broadly, too, but I know you've got a little list of things, and I'm just filibustering as you look up the definition of etiquette.
I've got it right here. I was just waiting for my slot in.
Wonderful. See, look at us. We're like radio professionals.
Etiquette, noun. The conduct or procedure required by good breeding or prescribed by authority to be observed in social or official life.
Oh, I like that good breeding. I like the idea of that you son, you come from good stock there with your dice etiquette. Can tell you were raised right.
I come from a long line of eugenically bred dice masters.
That's right. That's right. You never grab them up too quick. But let's get into it. What's the first thing on your list here?
So the first thing I have this kind of in an order of when it would come up in a game. That's kind
Okay.
of how I organize my stuff. But number one here, I've got buying the right dice. Now this is important. This is if you can buy any kind of dice you want. You could buy just the most garish dice possible, and that's okay if you like them that way. But I'm talking about buying the best dice. I'm talking about buying dice that help you and your opponent. So buying dice with enough contrast between the dice body and the pips, no irregularities in them to make them hard to read. Uh, did you have something to add to that?
Oh, I got plenty to add to this. First of all, I want to talk about why we need dice etiquette real quick. I think we should set up a little framing device for the story we're going to
Okay.
tell. Um, folks, are people cheat? Okay, let's just start there. People cheat. the other thing that feels, and that feels bad, doesn't it? That doesn't make for
Oh,
a good time. You know, another thing that doesn't make for a good time is confusion. We don't want confusion. We don't want the possibility of cheating. We want our dice in our dice game to be transparent. We want the whole thing, the whole transaction of the rolling to be as transparent and as frictionless as possible, right? Everybody
hmm
needs to know how many saves they need to make. Everybody needs to have some idea of what they're hitting on. Everybody needs to have ideas of what sort of modifiers are being applied when. And then, with regard to things like friction, exactly what you're talking about, man. Um, I don't like tiny dice. I don't
hmm
like hard to read dice. I don't like when the one and the six are something confusing. GW's
Yeah.
got a set of dice where the one is a skull, and I'm like, is that a six? And they're like, no, that's a one. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And the guy I
Yeah.
was playing with said, I know. I don't know why they did that. But he had all small dice. And here's the thing I've seen somebody play with D12s that only
Okay.
have six numbers on them.
I think I know of those dice.
Yeah, now they're fine, they function, that's cool. Here's the problem in 40k, we do a whole lot of pulling out the misses or pulling out the sixes. And
hmm
if your dice are tiny, or if your dice are not square, then it is really easy for those things to roll over by accident, by honest accident,
Yeah.
to a different number. And look, honest accident means it's cutting both ways. Means you're losing sixes and you're gaining sixes, and it's messy, right? It's also
hmm
hard for me to just look in the dice tray and get some kind of idea of what happened. I
Yeah.
believe that everybody now. I'm also coming speaking from a place of privilege. I've got a big old YouTube battle report style dice tray that is like mounted on the end of my gaming table. So take this for what you will. I understand if you got the little folding dice tray, this is tricky, but I think everybody should use full size dice. I was at a casino the other day and they had the retired craps dice for sale and they weren't crazy expensive. And I'm thinking, man, if I got 40 of those, that would be sick because you're not going to find any more balanced dice in the world. They're sharp on the edges, and but they're almost a little too big. But I thought that would be
hmm
neat. Uh, but yeah, buying the dice is definitely a place where you can go wrong. And I don't know if it's bad etiquette to bring inappropriate dice, but it's certainly messy, isn't it?
I think in the case of the D12s that are technically a D6, they might work out mathematically, but it's that bringing in such a interesting item that can then cause conflict before the game even begins because the other person might not even start to trust the dice because of that. They're too unorthodox to be able to be trusted.
It's like if you go to the nice steakhouse and you don't have a buttons on your shirt. Like they're gonna give you a jacket. It's almost like I want to just give you 20 regular old dice to play with. I'm sorry. It's the way we do things here.
Yeah.
Because
Uh,
honestly, the D12s are really hard to read at an angle from the end of the dice tray.
yeah. And talking about, I want to hit on this real quick. The contrast between the colors. If you've got something that like the pips like just disappear into the dice body when they're rolled, and you're doing like fast rolling, people are going to call you out because they can't. I can't tell that's a six or a five or a four. What is that? I just see the square kind of shape on just a kaleidoscope of colors on the dice.
Well,
That's not going to work.
I imagine you've got this on your list, so let's continue down the list.
That was actually part of this, part of the buying the
Oh, part of the
dice.
buying? Okay then. Yeah,
The
100%.
yeah,
So, yeah, I kind of wanted to get into the mechanics of the dice etiquette, but that may be on your list.
we'll get to that. I was just
Yeah.
mainly talking about like, the physical aspects of the dice.
Yeah, 100%.
Then I've got number two. If we're ready to move on. Uh, Actually roll your dice.
Yeah, get them moving a little bit.
Because
The
I have an antecedent point about this.
yeah,
There was a guy I used to play with, and when he would quote unquote roll his dice, this is what he would do. Okay, he would take his hand, hold it out flat in his hand, or palm up, have his little dice in the center of his palm, and then he would carefully swirl it around a little bit to give the illusion of a random chance taking place until
yeah.
he saw the dice reach a number that he needed, and then he would carefully, slowly, ever slowly tip his palm to the side where the sweat from his hand would hold the dice in place. And then once it got to about like a 100-degree angle, the dice would fall off onto the ground and roll the number he needed. And he would go, "Oh!" and point to the dice and look at me with shock and say, "Look, I rolled a 6."
That's diabolical.
Yeah, this guy was a psychopath. I'm not even kidding. This guy is like an American Psycho level guy.
Wow. Yeah, you can't play with that guy but once. Okay, so hmm, I think because there's a lot of this, you kind of flip it up and it just splats and drops. And there's a reason why at the craps table at the casino, they make you hit the wall, right? So people that don't know, I don't know how many non-adults we have listening, but at the end of the craps table is a uh, cone-shaped sort of like what is it? It's like a bunch of triangles.
Yeah,
At,
it's irregular
it's an
patterns. I think
irregular.
they're regular irregular patterns.
Yeah, it's like bumpy. Okay, there's a
Yeah.
bumpy wall at the end of the craps table, and when you throw the two dice, they require you to make contact with the wall. So you got to throw them all the way down the table, some 10, 12 feet, and they got to hit the wall and bounce around. Them's the rules. And
We need we
eh,
need some random generation going.
yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing, because you see people try to slide them and all kinds of stuff. But if it doesn't, but as
Yeah.
long as it hits the wall and gets interacting with those triangles that are sticking out, everybody's happy. Even though we can tell you're trying to be diabolical, setting them just how you
Hmm.
like them and all this sort of nonsense. I just chuck them because if they hit the wall, they're going to be pretty well randomized anyway. And nobody beat the casino at craps without just straight cheating. So at my house, the dice tray's big enough that you can hit the end of the dice tray. At the game store, when we're using these little foldy ones, it's tough. You're just trying
Hmm.
to get them in there, but you gotta at least shake them up. You gotta get your hands around them so that it's somewhat blind. You have to just get the thing spinning airborne at least, right? Like
Yeah.
flip it up in the air a couple of inches, something. Because I'm with you when you see people just sort of plop the thing. I'm like, come
Hmm.
on, man, that's not what we're doing. And I also think that all the friendly local game stores, because I know you guys are all building those tables custom. Uh, build some dice trays that sit on the end like permanent style. Build them a little bigger. A lot. I mean, a lot of the friendly local game store tables are oversized anyway. So people have place to put their sody pops and whatnot.
Hmm.
Stick a big old dice tray on the end of there, and everybody will have a better time. And I bet you sell more full size dice, which cost a few dollars more.
Yeah. My suggestion would be to put it on a hinge. That way it can fold out when needed.
Yep.
Doesn't create this big like tripping or like hip impaling uh accident type wait.
Yeah, that'd be
Sorry.
kind of cool.
Accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, I think mine's like 12 by 18, so there's a whole extra foot of table, and then
Mm.
the table's the size of the mat, plus a little bit on the long edges. But
Yeah.
anyway, I mean, I understand not everybody can have that, and if you're playing a tournament and stuff, then it's all foldy dice trays. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
This actually goes into my number.
you got to get them rolling.
Yeah. So my number three is actually use a dice tray or have a section that that you can roll your dice on. If you don't have a dice tray, pick a part of the battlefield that's not being used at that point, and then roll your dice there. If you're doing that, make sure to try to keep it sectioned off a little bit to where you're not constantly losing your dice.
Yeah, so I am anti-roll on the board. I know that's lame. I know a lot of people love to roll right by the unit that's doing the thing and all that kind of stuff. I got a number of reasons why I think this is poor etiquette. All right. Number one, you get a lot of dice going all over the place.
Yeah.
I don't like it when somebody says, "Oh, I rolled a 6," and they pull their 6 out from behind a piece of terrain that I can't see. I'm like, "Okay, I guess you did." Number 2, because they go everywhere, this encourages people to do like that diabolical person that you referenced earlier and just ever so carefully dump them right underneath their hand. I don't like that either. Uh,
Mhm.
Number 3, I don't want one of your, especially if you use those tiny dice, I don't want one of those things pinging one of my lovely painted Space Marines in their head. So,
Mhm.
I like to take this a step farther with regard to etiquette. If it bounces out of the dice tray, if it misses the dice tray, whatever, it doesn't even count. Roll it again, make sure it's in the tray. I think as a blanket rule, that's always the best and fairest way. That way, every single dice roll has got the same sort of chance of bouncing around the best it does in the tray. Everybody can see it. If you tried to put some sort of English on it that caused it to miss the dice tray, it's like, well, either try that again and don't miss, or quit trying to be so cute. But that's me.
Yeah. I like rolling on the table.
I know. Well, you play tanks and stuff. Like you can always find a little hole to roll some dice.
I like.
I got a bunch of dudes standing around.
I just like. We're playing on the battlefield. I want to roll my dice on the battlefield.
No, I know. I mean, it's
But here's the thing. There's a difference between me trying my best to roll on the battlefield and not like scattershot the whole battlefield and start picking up terrain, going, I think there's a dice here, a dice there, or even the worst part when you roll and then you get that one dice that bounces on the floor across the game store. Everyone is looking around here trying to figure out what that sound is. All the card players are looking around. They've got to see you bend over, looking like an absolute idiot trying to chase this one dice. You can't grab it in time. It bounces, goes under the like little chip stand where all the snacks are. You got to get on the dirty floor and try to reach under, grab your dice, pick the dust bunnies off of it. Don't do that. It
and
looks
th-
stupid.
and then say it's a 5.
Yeah. Oh, it was a 6 under the chip thing.
Yeah,
Oh, roll it
no.
again.
Yeah, roll it again. How about in the tray this time? Hey, on the thing of a tray, obviously I'm the tray person. But the people with no tray at all, you gotta get your money up or something. Like, do not, do not, everyone that can hear my voice, do not get out here rolling more than 5 or 6 dice outside of a tray. If you are playing orcs and you got your orc boys in the wah about to sling 60 attacks, if you are doing that naked on the table, you are an animal and you've got to be stopped. What else you got on this?
So next on our list, I have don't immediately grab up all your dice after you've rolled them.
Okay, now this is a huge one. Let's talk about. So I've got stuff on this because I think it's more than just grabbing, like quick grabbing. Quick
Yeah.
grabbing feels dishonest because it's like, I, you know, 5 hits out of 6. It's like, well, I didn't see
Mhm.
that. I roll real fast. However, I am always making sure to roll in the tray while my opponent is looking. I've announced what I'm looking for, and I uh, am communicating the entire time. And I think
Mhm.
that is the key to all of this. In fact, nearly all conflict in miniature war games comes from poor communication. If
Mm-hmm.
the rules are communicated as they're coming up, if the intent is communicated as it is being as movement is happening, if the dice are being communicated as they're being rolled, that is the way that you have a good time, a good fair game, and nobody feeling like anything is suspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll gather my dice. I'll be like 12 attacks. I'll name whatever the weapon, hidden on threes. That's your opportunity to say, I've got stealth on that guy. I'm like, hidden on fours, right?
Yeah.
Re-rolling because you're my of the moment. And then
Mm-hmm.
toss them out there. Now, then I announce if sixes do anything as I pull out my misses. There's going to be some misses. This is your opportunity as the non attack, as the defender to watch. And you can see, and my dice are full size, and they're quite obvious on their pips. So you see me pull out the ones and twos and threes. And then maybe I set let's say I have lethal hits, which I would have announced before I started. I'm pulling my lethals out over to the side.
Mm-hmm.
At which point, I grab them up, toss them again for wounds. Wounding on whatever number. This is where I ask your toughness, or I'm assuming because I already know or whatever, and then that's your opportunity to correct in any way that is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
We roll the wounds. You take a look. You're watching me pull out. I've got my lethals over here. I tell you how many saves. Now, let's flip it around. What I do when I'm defending is I watch, and if my opponent is not communicating those things, then I'll sort of lead the witness. I'll be like,
Yeah.
on threes? And then they can say, yeah. And then I'll be like, well, what gun is this? Who's this coming from? Those sorts of things. Because sometimes you'll play people who aren't very clear on what their target even is or what unit is shooting. So I always make sure that stuff is clear. And I always find I don't have to do that for very long before my opponent tends to start to get with the program, you know? And then
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
then the whole game just starts to run smoother and faster. But the other thing I do is I keep an eye on that first hit roll, and if they've got lethals, say, so same example, I pull out however many lethals that they've got of my own dice for saves that I'm about to roll. So this is about like playing quicker too. And then they roll their wound roll, and I tell them whatever my toughness is. So if
Mm-hmm.
if they don't say on fives, I'll say on fives, and they'll be like, yeah. Or maybe they're plus one to wound. And they're like, no, I got plus one to wound on that guy because da da da. I'm like, okay, cool. They roll them,
Mm-hmm.
and then as I watch them pull out their one through fours, I'm also already counting the sixes and fives because there may only be, let's say, three of them. So I know
Yeah.
I already have two in my hand. Those are the lethals. I see three. I got five dice already ready, and then I say, "What's AP?" Or they tell me the AP, and bam, I throw them. So
Mm-hmm.
we're picking them up fast. We're rolling pretty quick, right? But
Yeah.
but the communication is such that everybody's able to keep up because it's not just I rolled them and I grabbed them,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, what were you hitting on to begin with? Because if I know what you're hitting
Mm-hmm.
on, then I can probably see that in the relative quick pickup. You see,
Yeah.
so that's the Shane 40k Fanatics patented dice communication method, and I don't think you could come up with a better one.
No, communication's important in a game like this. In a game about social contract and in-person responsibility, communication is key for making sure there's no conflict that comes about with all this.
Yeah, and even if you're not trying to cheat, if you're someone who is silently counting your successes and then grabbing the dice up, well then I don't know if you're not trying to cheat or not because in a minute I'm going to need to know how many saves to roll. So like it would be better if you just told me what all is happening. Like I don't actually need to know how many hits because that that number is not very important, right? You roll
Yeah.
20, you hit on fours, you got 11 hits, right? Like, I don't
Yeah.
care. But I do need to
Yeah.
know when it shakes out to 5 wounds. So you might as well
Yeah.
say, hey, I'm hitting on fours here, and then I'm wounding on fours. Like, okay, cool. Because then, you say 20 attacks from whatever it is, 20 attacks, hitting on fours, wounding on fours, sixes are lethal. I'm like, cool. Bam, fours,
Yeah.
fours. All I'm doing is looking for 4, 5, and 6 as I'm, again, and I think this is good etiquette. I do. As you're rolling, I'm pulling dice out that I know are going to be saves that I have to make.
Hmm.
That just keeps it all going quicker.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll already have them and be like 8, and they'll say, yeah, 8, and I throw
Yeah.
them. Um, and also good dice etiquette in 40k especially is you got to mention that AP on the front end because everybody's got something to lower an AP for a CP. So a lot of times everybody knows that that's going to come from the big guns. So you should let people know. Again, just more reason to let people know what is shooting and why and where.
Hmm.
You got anything else on dice etiquette?
Number 5, I have check that you leave with all your dice.
Yeah. Um, it's real easy to leave a whole bunch of dice as wound markers all over the table.
Yeah, not even that. If you're the kind of person that's rolling 60 dice for your orc attacks, you're probably leaving a few under the terrain pieces throughout the table.
Yeah, certainly if you're not using any dice tray like an animal.
Yeah. So you some of your dice probably, if you're at the local friendly game store, that's probably ending up in like the owner's like dice box, locked away forever, or just ends up in your friend's stuff if they're picking up dice. If you both share the similar dice colors, like there's no telling like what the cross contamination is going to be.
I like that. I got one question. What do you think, as far as 40k etiquette, about somebody roll, like, usually this happens with like blast weapons or possibly flamers and stuff, but somebody rolls a 60 automatic hits and then they wound anti-infantry 2, right?
Yeah.
Re-rolling because bleep it. What do you think when they're like, you want to just roll these again for the saves? Because I feel like in that extreme case, yeah, I'm happy to roll your dice. If it's more,
Yeah,
I feel like I've got to cut off. If it's like 20 wounds, I'll still just grab my own. What do you think of that? Where's your line on those sort of ridiculous scenarios?
I guess I would roll their dice, but I wouldn't be happy about it. I wouldn't like it because I'm touching their dice, their diceal energy. It's kind of like I'm crossing my diceal energy into their diceal energy, and that's a recipe for like bad connections and energy.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
don't want to touch theirs. I want to roll my dice
No, I'm with it.
because
What?
I've had this dice theory for a while that every dice has its own set of infinite numbers that have been predetermined by the universe to roll. So
Oh
if I'm
yeah. So
rolling their
at some stages out of sixes.
yeah, or it won't have a six until like I don't know how many more rolls. But that's why you don't like just start randomly rolling dice because then you're using up your integers you already had.
Yeah, I like that idea. I always think it sure would be stupid if this is the if this is the particular version of the simulation where I just roll ones for this entire game
Yeah.
because this mathematically unlikely, but not impossible.
Hmm.
Ugh, it feels that way sometimes. Um, the other thing about that particular situation that maybe that little what do we call it, taboo, right, of rolling the other person's dice is I'm already feeling bad if they've rolled 60 automatic hits and wound on twos re-rolling.
Yeah.
Okay, so in that extreme example, I'm just happy to get it over with because obviously I'm picking up whatever unit that was, you know.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and then they tell you, oh, it's AP2, by the way. I was like, cool, cool.
I was
So
AP2. I already had a 6-up save. It doesn't matter.
yeah, my Space Marines are looking for 5s and 6s. Good, good. Can
By
I
the way,
have
this is
can
AP4. Okay, thank you.
can I have cover? No, of course not. Flamers and 40k. That's something we're going to talk about someday. I got ideas about torrent and blast weapons, but that's for another time. We're out of time. I've been Shane. That's Austin. Communicate your movement, communicate your rules, communicate your dice as you're rolling them for better dice etiquette, and get out of here with those black on black dice and things of that nature. Also, don't show up with green on red dice because colorblind people just see those as brown, and I feel like if you show up with the colorblind specials, you are doing that on purpose, you jerk. And until next time, be sure to
Fanatical.